The world is full of strange, unsettling moments, the kind you'd never believe unless you saw them yourself. And when those moments are captured on camera, they hit even harder. Today, we're looking at some of the most disturbing footage ever recorded. Clips that are guaranteed to send chills straight down your spine. Let's start with the first one. In the last weeks of 2016, 36-year-old adrenaline enthusiast Fabio Ezequiel de Moraes was preparing for a stunt he believed would mark a new personal milestone. Friends and family knew him as someone who sought out challenges for the sheer thrill of pushing himself further each time. This particular challenge was a 40-meter bungee jump from a railway bridge in São Paulo, a jump he intended to document on camera. On the recording, Fabio appears calm and excited, standing alongside the people closest to him, his wife, his 6-year-old son, and his brother. They gathered not out of concern, but out of pride. For Fabio, this was supposed to be another story he'd tell later, another triumph to add to his growing list of daring adventures. At one point, he had even imagined sharing the jump with his young son, a thought he ultimately set aside. When the moment arrived, Fabio positioned himself at the edge, the landscape stretching far beneath him. He took a breath, leaned forward, and launched into the air. Within seconds, the situation turned catastrophic. The rope fastened to his ankle never pulled taut. There was no upward recoil, no familiar snap that slows a bungee jumper's descent. The specialized crew responsible for assembling the setup had made a devastating misjudgment. The cord was far too long. With nothing to counter his fall, Fabio plunged all the way to the ground, a scene witnessed by the family who had come to support him. Emergency responders transported him to the hospital, but the impact had been immediately fatal. In the aftermath, Fabio's own camera footage became the primary evidence investigators relied on. Frame by frame, it revealed the fatal error in the preparation, a mistake that turned a moment meant to celebrate bravery into a tragedy that claimed the life of a husband, a father, and a brother. Sorry for the interruption, but if you're finding this video interesting so far, make sure to leave a like, subscribe, and turn on notifications so you don't miss the next breakdown. Alright, let's move on, because the next case takes us from a tragic accident to something far more sinister. It started like any ordinary afternoon. Lynn, a worn-out yet devoted young mother, arrived at school to collect her 6-year-old daughter, May. The two headed home together, walking through the evening haze with no idea that their routine would soon twist into something unimaginable. As they reached their apartment building, Lynn felt a strange tension in the air. The staircase lights sputtered, blinking in a way that made the narrow hallway look distorted. She slowed her steps. A shiver raced up her spine as her eyes drifted toward the CCTV camera mounted in the corner, its tiny red light blinking steadily, almost warningly. Trying to dismiss the unease, she unlocked the door and gently guided May inside. Neither of them knew that the moment that door swung open, their lives were stepping straight into a nightmare. Hours later, once the footage and the story spread online, shock rippled through every comment section. Viewers pieced together a horrifying truth. The intruder was Lynn's former partner. Investigators revealed that he had forced his way in and subjected Lynn to an attack so brutal that the details left even seasoned officers shaken. The most chilling part was the likelihood that May, small and terrified, had been present through the ordeal. What should have been a quiet evening at home instead became a memory etched into the minds of everyone involved. The revelation triggered an immediate police search for the man responsible, a search fueled by the hope of delivering justice for a family forever scarred by that night. Some moments, no matter how much time passes, refuse to fade, for victims, for loved ones, and even for the people who hear the story afterward. That case alone is enough to haunt anyone. But what happens next brings us into a completely different kind of nightmare. one where the cameras were rolling the entire time. The night of September 18th, 2023 began like any other rehearsal. A small group of friends had gathered at a house to tighten up their dance routine before an upcoming recital. With the performance just days away, they spent hours recording their solo steps, then their full choreography, determined to get everything perfect. By the time they wrapped up, the energy in the house shifted from focused intensity to relaxed laughter. They piled into one room, unwinding with a simple game meant to keep the fun going. At first, it was harmless, a challenge involving moving only when the lights went out, but halfway through the game, something changed.
Are you ready? Oh. Oh.
What the hell?
Oh my God.
Turned the light on.
Sorry.
What the heck?
Something fell, right?
Yeah, it was sitting right here. Was it?
And it just fell off? Okay.
Fell?
No,
That's
feel
not
this.
flew off.
There's no way
It was
this
here?
fell. Feel how heavy this is.
No.
Yes,
Oh, wow.
it was sitting right here. Did you touch that?
No, she didn't touch it.
I don't know. That's, I don't know.
Maybe it was like.
Wait. What?
Was that
Why
already
is that
moving?
one? Oh my God! You guys!
A sudden clatter cut through the jokes. Everyone stopped. On the floor lay a heavy crystal cube, one that had been resting securely on a shelf moments earlier. Confused, the girls inspected it, insisting that no one had bumped the shelf or brushed against it. The weight of the cube alone made its fall hard to believe. They shrugged it off, until it happened again. This time, the sound was louder, sharper. The cube hadn't simply tipped over. It had crossed the room, landing far from where it started. One of the girls, Casey, later explained that the distance it traveled didn't make sense unless someone had physically thrown it, but every person in the room was accounted for on camera. Before anyone could process what they'd seen, a slow creaking filled the room. A cabinet door began to open, inch by inch, on its own. Then the ceiling light started swaying as though something unseen had brushed past it. That was the moment panic finally took over. The girls bolted from the room, abandoning the game and leaving the camera recording behind them. To this day, no one in the group has posted a follow-up explaining what happened that night. And until they do, the footage remains one of those rare, unsettling clips that leaves viewers with more questions than answers. Some moments are strange, but this one feels unexplainable. But our next case isn't paranormal. It's something even more chilling, because it happened in the middle of an ordinary workplace, in broad daylight, and it was all caught on security cameras. In the early hours of June 22nd, 2025, an ordinary shift at a small taxi stand in Izmir's Kiyaka district quietly unfolded, until everything changed in an instant. The stand's veteran radio operator, a 75-year-old man who had worked there for decades, suddenly grew pale, staggered, and collapsed behind his desk. Just a few steps away, a coworker who had already wrapped up his own shift turned back when he heard the commotion. He rushed to the older man, trying to understand what had happened as the rest of the staff hovered nearby, frozen with uncertainty. Someone grabbed a phone and dialed emergency services. Dispatchers began giving instructions. Check his pulse, see if he's breathing, prepare to start aid. The atmosphere inside the tiny workplace shifted from confusion to urgency. But before those steps could be carried out, the scene took a devastating turn.
Evet, en çok canı acıtacak hedef halinde olabilecek yer olarak belki. Türkiye'de başkenti.
Aslında ben çok takılmadım. Sonuçta İstanbul Türkiye'nin kalbi. Yani eğer biz Allah muhafaza... Başkenti Ankara. Tabii. Suriye'nin başkenti Tahran, Suriye'nin başkenti Şam.
As the other man leaned in to help, stress surged through the room, and he too abruptly collapsed. The staff could only watch in disbelief. Moments earlier, both men had been speaking, moving, working. Now they were both on the ground. Security cameras captured every second of the chaos, the frantic gestures, the stunned silence, and the overwhelming fear that settled over the co-workers as they tried to decide what to do next. Emergency responders arrived within minutes, but the answers they delivered were the ones everyone had silently dreaded. Both men had suffered sudden heart attacks one after the other, leaving the team with no time to react. Despite rapid attempts to revive them, neither survived. Witnesses would later describe the event as happening faster than anyone could process, a tragic chain of moments that left the small taxi stand shaken and in disbelief. A tragedy like that reminds us how fragile life is. But our final case strikes at an even deeper fear, the fear of danger coming straight to your home without warning. This last clip is one of the most disturbing home recordings ever shared online. On December 21st, 2023, a quiet day in Alicia's home took an unexpected turn. She first noticed it as a series of heavy thumps rattling her window, sharp, rhythmic impacts that didn't belong to any normal daytime noise. Startled and unsure what was causing it, she grabbed her phone and hit record, hoping to make sense of the strange disturbance. What her camera captured was far more unsettling than anything she imagined. A man suddenly appeared right outside her window, slamming his forehead into the glass over and over with alarming force. When Alicia cautiously drew the curtain back, he hesitated for the briefest moment, locking eyes with her in a confused, vacant stare. Then, without warning, he resumed pounding his head against the pane, as though he couldn't stop. Even someone passing by on the sidewalk noticed the bizarre scene and began recording from outside, stunned by what they were witnessing. Fearing the glass might shatter, or that he might break through, Alicia immediately called the police. The man showed no signs of stopping, completely consumed by whatever was driving him, each impact louder than the last. Within minutes, police cars pulled up. Officers rushed in, restraining the man before he could inflict more harm on himself or potentially on Alicia. She later explained she had no idea who he was. Authorities eventually determined he was in a severe mental health crisis, likely worsened by heavy drug use. He was taken into custody and brought to the station for treatment and evaluation. Alicia never encountered him again, but the events of that day, the sounds, the stare, the sudden eruption of chaos, stayed with her, etched sharply into memory.